This is great conversation, but we got to get into our personal favorites. What are at the tops of your guys' lists, and maybe some hidden gems that we may not have heard? Because I know we're gonna all have, the Final Fantasies and the Chrono Triggers, and there's gonna be some that I feel like are gonna be all of our lists. And obviously, I'm not saying don't mention them, but I really want to hear some that maybe some of us haven't heard of.
Where do you want to start?
We're gonna start with CB.
Oh, we're gonna start with me. Ooh, as far as my personal favorites, Vagrant Story,
Mm.
um, Legend of Dragoon, obviously.
Of course, obviously.
um, Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy 3.
Mm-hmm.
Which one?
The real
The
3.
real
3
one?
or 6?
Okay.
The
real
real 3.
Got it. Okay.
I mean, 5. Final Fantasy for me has always been there growing up. I really didn't start wandering off the path until post PS1 and
Interesting.
trying some of the other ones. And we didn't get a PS2 till later in my house. So picking up a lot of the PS1 JRPGs like
Ton of
Legend of
them.
Dragon.
So many.
Oh, dude, there's when we get to the ones that we've missed over the years, I have a list. But yeah, like I really didn't hit some of those until like later. And so now like that's part of like my passion project this year is going through and playing some of those. But yeah, for me, like Legend of Dragoon and Vagrant Saga will always be permanently burned into my brain. Oh, and of course, Baby's first JRPG, Pokemon.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And
I assume that'd be on somebody's list.
it's always going to be on my list. Red, blue, and yellow. And to some degree, the OG Legend of Zelda.
You consider that a JRPG?
I would not.
I
In
don't think I would.
some aspects, I would.
Yeah, that's a
You
tough
know?
one. It's kind of a gray area. Like you don't. I mean, you kind of have some character progression in the sense that you collect more permanent heart containers throughout the game. It's kind of like leveling up in a sense.
I know old gaming magazines would always call Zelda an RPG, but I always thought that they were dumb for doing so. So that's my way.
It has RPG elements. It was made in Japan.
Sure. So Bayonetta JRPG.
Yeah, there you go.
It's
But
made in Japan, and you
that's why I
level.
said it has
skills.
elements of it, and that's why I said to some degree, the original
All right.
Legend of Zelda.
That's true.
Okay.
I guess I don't agree.
I don't either.
That's okay. We don't.
That's
have to.
fine. It's my opinion.
Brandon, what about you? What's in your list?
Have you heard of Final Fantasy?
No, what's that?
Yeah, no, that's definitely.
What's better, Final Fantasy 1 or Stranger of Paradise, the prequel, the Final Fantasy 1?
I have not played it because those trailers turned me off so bad from wanting to kill Chaos, that badly.
And Garland,
yeah,
Garland
those trailers were just something else, and to me, it also came out at a time when I'm knee deep in remaking Final Fantasy 1, and I'm just completely absorbed into what that game was about and everything, and the way that the story is presented. And then Stranger Paradise got announced, and I looked at it and I said, "That's not Final Fantasy 1. What is this?" And I just
think about all the juicy lore you would have learned about the secret history of Final Fantasy 1.
I've picked up some little hints here and there about some of the stuff that goes on, and it does make me curious. I might check it out at one of these days. But yeah, so Final Fantasy obviously belongs in this list, and that's most of the RPGs I've played have been kind of in the Final Fantasy universe. But there's a few notable ones that are on my list of favorites as well. Legend of Dragoon, CB mentioned. Love that game. Xenogears is one of my favorites of all time. Yeah. I know, Zach, you were playing that a while back. That is such a deep game. Just the themes that are going on in that, some of the stuff that some of the places they go with that story and those characters, stuff that I've never seen in another video game, period. So absolutely fantastic game. Chrono Trigger, obviously. Super Mario RPG. I know the remake came out a little while ago, so you guys have been talking about that a bit. That one was one that I played a little bit later after I was already pretty solidly into RPGs, and then kind of went back and played the original of Super Mario RPG, and that's a really solid game. As far as more obscure ones that I would definitely recommend, there are at least a couple that come to mind all the time, actually, when I think about this, and they're actually some of my biggest inspirations for some of the stuff that I've done in Final Fantasy Renaissance, but also some stuff that is a big inspiration for the next project that I want to work on, which I'm still trying to kind of solidify my ideas on. But one of those games is Shining in the Darkness,
Hmm.
which I believe was the precursor to Shining
The
Force.
the Sega
Oh.
Genesis one.
Yes.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
cool.
So Sega Genesis, Shining in the Darkness. This is one of those games where it's definitely an RPG, and I would also refer to it as a dungeon crawler, just because of the way that the game is structured. You've got a town that you basically is like your hub. You know, you go to the shops and buy your weapons and armor and spells and all that kind of stuff and items to then take into the dungeon. And then there's just a single dungeon that you're delving into throughout the entire game, and you get a little bit further each time and then have to go out. Like, it's one of those ones where you're kind of resource managing, because there's certain points where you might find a portal that takes you straight all the way back to the town, to the entrance of the dungeon, or you might just be exploring and getting lost, and you don't know if you're going to find a shortcut back to town or not. So at a certain point, you have to cut your losses and say, okay, I think I might have enough resources to get back to town, but if I keep going, I'm going to be stuck. And so you have to make that call and hoof it back out to town yourself. And so you're just slowly throughout the game, leveling up and acquiring more loot and better weapons and armor and spells, and getting a little bit further in the dungeon each time. And it's a really deep, like, labyrinth kind of dungeon where every floor is like a maze. It was one of those games where I don't know if I'm sure you can find this information online now, and if they've ever remade the game, they'd probably give you an in-game map. But at the time, I was drawing the entire map on paper on every single floor of that dungeon, and so I've got this notebook that shows me every floor of that dungeon. That was part of my excitement of playing that game too, just like, that feeling of being the person who's discovering how to get through this place and having to record it yourself. I always thought that was cool. Another one that has a lot of similarities to that is Wizardry.
Hmm.
I know
Oh
those
wow.
games go
Yeah.
way back. The first ones were, I think, old PC or Mac games, and they had some entries on the NES as well. The one that stands out to me the most, though, was the one that I've actually played, which was on PS2. And it was just called Wizardry. It wasn't like, Wizardry 5 or 8 or something like that. It was just the PS2 version of Wizardry, and very much the same. You've got a single town with all these different places that you can go to, and then you're going into this one dungeon and just getting deeper and deeper each time. That one also had like a permadeath kind of mechanic, where if you lost a character in that dungeon and you did not get them revived in the right way within a certain amount of time, they were lost forever. So pretty brutal. But those kind of games stand out to me a lot. It's kind of like the precursor to roguelikes, right? Where it's not so much that you're going into the dungeon, you get so far each time, and then they boot you back out and give you some experience or something. It's more of a, I have to determine, can I go any farther, or do I have to leave myself? But you're slowly, progressing throughout the game, getting a little bit further each time. And I've always liked those a lot.
You said
Nice.
roguelike, but I assume you meant run-based randomizer.
Is that the name we've
That's
landed on now?
that's somebody wrote that in last week, right, Scott? Who was
I
Yeah.
think it was David Newman.
David Newman?
Our
That's good.
RBRs.
I think
RBRs.
I suggested loop progression because the
Yeah.
loop is definitely prominent in those games.
I like that.
Yeah.
I was at home just thinking about bad names. I was like, death-utation, like deducation. You get
Deducation.
educated through death.
Yes, that applies.
I like
but,
it.
oh yeah. So some if Brandon is done, I guess I can
Yeah.
jump in here. Obviously, Final Fantasy is the king of these whole genre, really, right? I mean, but Final Fantasy 9, 7, 15, 13, those are all incredible games. Love them to death. Those are some of my favorites. Persona 3 and 4, of course, some of my favorites. Never did play 5. And I mean, and Xenogears was really good when I played of it. I never did get through the second disc, Walls of Text, but
Yeah,
I
it's a
planned
shift.
I plan to get back there at some point. I tell myself because I was really digging it. It's a very complex game.
I don't remember if I had warned you before you got to that point. I feel like I did because we were talking on Discord for a little bit when you were playing that game originally, and I think I may have made sure to make you aware that the game was going to dramatically shift
Yeah,
to less action
I
at a
think you
certain point.
definitely did. I think I just had the harebrained scheme that when I got there, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take a quick break and play Vagrant Story,
Mm,
and then
Yeah.
I
that'd be
just
hard to
never
get
got
back.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never got back to it. But I will. I will one day. In terms of hidden gems, I don't really feel like I have had many hidden gems. The most hidden one I can think of is playing a few hours of Shadow Hearts and really loving it. It was really cool, but then I heard it ended on a massive cliffhanger, so I needed to have Shadow Hearts Covenant as well because I really didn't want to get there because I played it much later. When I bought my Shadow Hearts copy of PS2, it was like $60 in the 2010s or whatever. But now Shadow Hearts Covenant is even rarer, and it's like hundreds of dollars to get a copy. So one day I'll play Shadow Hearts. I'm sure
You can
CV.
just borrow my copy.
That's just not gonna. I can't. I can't. That's a lot of responsibility. That's quite an investment you'd be sending over to me. That's one of your kids' college tuition payments. Can't
That's
I
not
have
that
that.
expensive.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, JRPGs they're just fun.
They
Cozy
are.
little games.
Yeah.
What about you, Scott?
I got you guys mentioned a lot of the ones on my list. It was funny. Somebody mentioned, I think Brandon mentioned Xenosaga.
I mentioned
Um,
Xenogears, but
or Xenogears. I'm
Xenosaga kind
sorry.
of
No,
goes
no, no.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I meant to say Xenogears because back in the early 2000s, I was dead set on I had to own a copy of Xenogears, and I went on eBay and I bought. Even then, it was a pricey copy, or it was a pricey copy for the time, and I got it. And I can't tell you when or how or why I got rid of it, but I no longer have
Oh,
that copy of Xenogears, and I'm really angry because that game is really valuable now. Um, but
so real quick fun fact: if you don't have a copy of Xenogears and you want to check it out, if you still have a PS3, connect that thing to the network, and you can download Xenogears for I want to say like $5, maybe $10, something like
I
that.
think it's
really,
$6. $5.99
Yeah.
was a lot of the PS1 prices.
Yeah, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
available on there. At least last I checked, I downloaded a copy just in case because I have one copy on disc from it came out on PlayStation 1 originally,
hmm
and I played the hell out of it. So I'm not sure if those discs are going to last much longer. But yeah, you can still get it on the PS3 store at least.
good to know. Good to know. You mentioned Super Mario RPG, but I wanted to give a shout out to the other Mario RPGs like Paper Mario and the Mario and Luigi,
Luigi.
Luigi, Mario and
Daisy
Luigi,
Chain?
like Superstar
Oh,
Saga
Super Saiyan,
and
that's so good. Superstar Saga. Oh man,
Bowser's Inside Story. Those are all just like really clever JRPGs, and like the way that you navigate the open worlds in those has just always been really clever. Like that a lot. I feel like most of the ones I've played are widely known. I love Earthbound so much. That game is so quirky and weird, and I absolutely love it. Lost Odyssey. I was surprised nobody mentioned that one. I love Lost Odyssey, although I will admit I never finished it because I hit a grind wall.
yeah,
But
yeah.
what a beautiful,
I never
beautiful
played
game.
that one, and I don't think you can find it anywhere now, can you?
Which one?
Lost Odyssey?
It's on
I,
Xbox.
it was
Or
on a
did it?
yeah, it was a physical. There
Yeah,
was a
Mm,
physical. It
physical
was, I
copies.
think it had 4
can you
discs, didn't it?
I don't have an Xbox, but I typically play those kind of games on my PC because a lot of the Xbox games you can play on PC anyway. But I don't think I was able to find that one for PC. Like I don't think it's on Steam or anything like
No, I think
that.
that was
Yeah,
an Xbox 360
Yeah,
exclusive, wasn't it?
Yeah.
it
yeah. I think so.
was.
Yeah.
I do love that everyone I know stopped at the same boss fight though.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's such a sharp difficulty spike.
Yeah. And one that nobody mentioned, so I'm worried that it doesn't count as a JRPG, but Parasite Eve?
Oh,
That's
good
a
one.
that's a
Yeah,
It
that's
Yeah.
a
it
I,
it
JRPG,
I
isn't
would
may
it?
I would
It
count it.
may
It's
come
got
up
the
in a
elements.
conversation here in a moment.
It's definitely more
Uh,
JRPG than The Legend of Zelda.
yeah, right.
I would say so. You don't have a party of characters, but I would argue you don't have to for it to be an RPG. But yeah,
Oh
it
yeah.
definitely had a lot of RPG elements.
So those are.
Great
Oh,
game.
Oh, you know,
and go ahead.
I was gonna say a shout out to Resonance of Fate, PS3 and I think 360 JRPG, where it was very focused on gun battles and positioning,
Mm,
and it was cool because most of your attacks changed your position, which I thought was interesting for a grid based strategy game like that. So
yeah,
you would always be cognizant of your motion. Oh, dude! Oh my god! I'm sorry, Scott. I didn't mean to hijack this
you're
here.
good, man.
Do you remember Eternal Sonata?
I
Yep.
remember the title. I've never played it.
You remember at 360, an entire JRPG set in the dying dreams of Frederick Francois Chopin,
Oh
the
wow,
No
composer.
way.
Yeah.
I didn't know that about it.
I didn't
Oh, that
either. Now I have to play that game.
I have a
well,
copy.
I could have swore it was in the trailers. I apologize if it was not, but if it is not in the trailer, it is revealed in the first 5 minutes of the game,
Yeah.
which of course is no excuse for a spoiler. But I could have swore that was part of the selling point, that it is just it's this fantasy world in Chopin's head,
That's
because he's a character in it, but he's aware that he's dreaming, but everyone else like, no, dude, we live here. Like
so.
it's
There's
it's
got to be
kind
a
of it.
ton of his music in the game, I
Yes,
assume.
yeah. Chopin's music is a huge part of the game, and it's kind of interesting because the whole time it is like, is Chopin being transported to a different world he doesn't know about, or is it really his dream? Is kind of the push and pull of the story, because he's
Ah,
convinced he's just in his dream, and everyone else is like, well, then why do I remember being a kid? And he's just like, because I have a very thorough imagination.
Huh.
is it
It's very
pronounced Chopin? I've been pronouncing it
Chopin. Yeah.
Chopin my entire
I,
life.
I don't know.
Chopin.
That
I've
game
heard it
says
both
Chopin about
ways.
1900 times, so I
Ah,
guess Chopin got stuck in my head. But yeah, it is. What an interesting game, and everybody's named after music. Like the main character's name is Allegretto, and your main
ah,
love interest is named Polka.
Hmm,
nice.
Yeah,
that's
it's
cool.
it's a very cute game. Shout out to Eternal Sonata,
All right. The
and shout out
only
to the most bizarre credits in history. This is not a spoiler, where all of the characters, as the credits will play, just talk to you through the screen and talk to you about how important your friends are to you.
Hmm.
And it's just 15 minutes of these characters saying, remember to go out and hang out with your friend. Have you talked to your buddy lately? He probably misses you.
after you played a
Yeah,
Goodness.
60-hour JRPG.
yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like go outside, kid.
yeah. I guess it is kind of. Yeah, I guess that is kind of what it's saying.
In terms of like hidden gem ones for me, I like I said, I played mostly widely popular ones, but the first one I ever played, I feel like nobody's ever heard of, is RoboTrek on the Super Nintendo. If you haven't played that one, go check out that one for the music alone. And we actually, I did a Patreon episode with Kevin on that one. You can hear us talk about it. That game is, I obviously I'm a little biased because it's the first one I ever played, but it's so good. It's just such a great game. You play as an inventor, and instead of actually fighting yourself, you build robots, and it's like a grid based JRPG. Like it's all about positioning behind your enemies, and you have to get all this gear and shields and swords and everything, and the music will be stuck in your head for forever, but in a good way.
See, dude, I think that's another reason JRPGs stand out to me is because while a lot of them are turn based, they always do their own little spin or flair to it.
Yeah,
So you're
like
always
Final Fantasy was about limit breaks. You know
right.
what I
You're
mean?
always getting some a little new, some a little fresh spin
Yeah.
on things.
Well, in the
Mhm.
Final Fantasy games, specifically, they're kind of part of their claim to fame is that every new entry they kind of invent, like they reinvent themselves. They come up with
Yeah,
whole new mechanics and kind of, uh, you know, spearhead the genre in that way. Like everyone else is kind of like copying Final Fantasy's ideas.
yeah.
Yeah.
Controversial draw systems included.
Yeah. Why didn't that show up in any other games?
because Scott and I were the only ones who liked it,
Yeah,
apparently.
I liked it. I liked it. I gotta go back to my playthrough of that game because I was playing that for a while and I really enjoyed it, but now I forgot how to play. So start all over again. But any that you guys have
Fight one
missed?
battle, it'll come back to you.
Yeah, right. Any that you've missed over the years that you regret not playing, Brandon?
Oh man.